Imagine the sensation of drifting off before surgery, your consciousness slipping away as the warm, numbing wave envelops you. That's essentially what medical euthanasia does. The drugs enhance your brain GABA activity, it's the brain off switch, while blocking pain receptors, creating an experience indistinguishable from falling into a dreamless sleep. Many overdose victims experience something similar. Dopamine floods the system, bringing euphoria before the body simply forgets to breathe. Fascinating, right? If you're enjoying this deep dive into how our brains handle life's final moments, don't forget to hit that like button. And today we are ranking the different ways to die, from the most merciful to the absolute worst. Let's continue with S tier: nitrogen asphyxiation and high-altitude hypoxia. Most people assume suffocation is painful, but the real torment comes from carbon dioxide buildup, not oxygen deprivation. Breathing pure nitrogen or extending to extreme altitudes create a bizarrely peaceful exit, as the brain never realizes anything is wrong. Pilots who suffered oxygen leaks described feeling lightheaded, then euphoric, before blacking out without distress. Deep-sea divers experience something eerily similar due to nitrogen narcosis. Many become so intoxicated by the sensation that they forget to surface, fading out in a blissful haze. Some divers even become addicted to the sensation, chasing that feeling on deep descents instead of using drugs on land. A tier: swift and efficient exits. Decapitation, when done properly, ranks surprisingly high. The guillotine was designed for clean, rapid beheadings, severing the brainstem before the pain signals could even be processed. Some historical accounts claim victims blink for a few seconds post-severance, but forensic studies suggest awareness fades almost instantly. High-speed accidents that destroy the brainstem in milliseconds follow the same principle. 1 second you exist, the next you are gone. Explosion at a close range. A direct hit from a grenade or a high-impact explosive obliterates the body before pain registers. If the brainstem is destroyed first, there is no suffering at all. However, if you are just outside the lethal radius, that's a different and much worse story. We'll get into that in a D tier. B tier: manageable but not ideal. Electrocution, properly executed. A direct hit from a high-voltage source, for example, an electric chair, a lightning strike, can cause near-instant brain death if the current disrupts cardiac or neural function. However, the electric chair has a horrific history of malfunctions. If the amperage is too low, the victim remains conscious while suffering from full-body burns. In contrast, lightning strikes tend to be more merciful, frying neural pathways before pain can be processed. Drowning and freezing to death. Drowning is a mixed bag. Initially, panic and suffocation create extreme distress, but after a certain point, the brain floods with CO2, leading to a sedative-like state. Similarly, hypothermia starts painfully with burning skin and violent shivering, but ends with an oddly pleasant drowsiness before consciousness fades. Victims of extreme cold often hallucinate and feel warm before slipping away. C tier: prolonged and painful. Sword fights and gunshot wounds. Hollywood lies: most gunshot wounds aren't instantly fatal, and sword fights rarely end with a clean, dramatic stop. Instead, gunshot victims often experience intense pain as they bleed out over minutes or even hours. The body does release adrenaline and endorphins to dull pain, but agony usually returns once the initial shock wears off. Swords, spears, and other melee weapons cause excruciating wounds, often leading to slow death via infection or internal bleeding. Falling from extreme heights. People assume falling to your death is an instant knockout, but studies suggest otherwise. While unconsciousness might occur mid-fall due to shock or cardiac arrest, many survivors of high-altitude jumps remain aware until impact. The actual landing is unsurvivable, but those final seconds of realization, absolutely terrifying. fire and severe burns. Burn injuries trigger the worst pain receptors in the body. Even brief exposure to extreme heat causes third-degree burns, which destroy nerve endings and eventually dulling the pain. But in those first moments, your body is in complete sensory overload. If the flames don't kill immediately, suffocation from smoke inhalation often follows, making it a drawn-out nightmare. D tier, the absolute worst ways to die. Suffocation, non-nitrogen-based this time. Being buried alive or choking to death is one of the most primal, panic-inducing ways to go. Without knockout gases like nitrogen, carbon dioxide buildup triggers extreme distress, with the body convulsing desperately for air. Victims experience chest-crushing pain, an overwhelming sense of doom, and complete helplessness. Torture and prolonged execution methods. Historical execution methods like crucifixion, drowning and quartering, and impalement were designed to maximum suffering. These deaths lasted for hours or even days, subjecting the victim to unrelenting agony. Similarly, lethal gas chambers weren't as clean as they sound. Victims often experience painful choking and violent convulsions before losing consciousness. Being eaten alive, predators rarely kill instantly. Big cats go for the throat, but many animals like bears or Komodo dragons begin eating their prey while it's still conscious. People who have survived partial maulings report indescribable pain as flesh is torn away, only to be overwhelmed by shock as their body shuts down. What's fascinating about all these methods is how the brain reacts. In many cases, the body fights to numb pain, or induce unconsciousness before the things get too bad. Near-death experiences suggest the brain may even generate hallucinatory peaceful exits, a last-ditch survival mechanism to ease the transition. So, if you had to rank your own preferred exit, where would it fall on the list? Let's hope none of us have to find out firsthand. Disclaimer: this is a thought experiment. If you're struggling, please seek help. The world needs more curious minds like yours.